Having our community right here on Sarasota Bay is truly paradise found. However, there will be a price of paradise if we don't make our community more resilient and sustainable for the future. What if we view this as an opportunity for Sarasota to lead the way? I remember witnessing Hurricane Helene and the fact that Selby Gardens was protected from flooding by its cutting-edge stormwater vault. What if all new construction in our region had significant provisions for stormwater management? Our future would definitely be more resilient and sustainable for the generations to come. Our next presentation is entitled Developing Sarasota Bay into a Hub for Coastal Resilience, and we all need to strive for this together. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Technology Tom Lewis, PE, JD, and Senior Vice President, CSA Group Engineers and Architects. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Resilient Rob. I appreciate that, my new name. And actually it is fitting because technology, the living laboratory theme for today, everything we do as engineers, architects, which is what I do in my day job, it really is all tied to technology, and with AI now, even more importantly, things are changing very rapidly, and it's great that CAC is on board as a technology participant, a technology-enabled entity through the living laboratory. It makes it a very exciting time to be speaking here today on the topic of resilience. So Rob mentioned my company, I'm Senior Vice President at CSA Group, where I am in charge of water and energy. And resilience and sustainability, climate adaptation are major drivers for both the water sector and the energy sector. So it very much is a core part of my job at CSA Group. And I'm happy to introduce Tim Wales, who's here in the second row here. He just joined CSA Group this week. He used to be the chief engineer and the assistant director for the Water Resources Group of the city of St. Petersburg. So one of the things we're doing, I'm introducing him around in Florida and up north where we also have business, and then in Puerto Rico we were a few weeks ago. CSA, by the way, is a Puerto Rico headquartered and founded company working up and down the East Coast. In all of those places, the Northeast, Florida, and Puerto Rico, of course, have to be very focused on hurricanes, but other types of damages and natural disasters, earthquakes, for example, happened in Puerto Rico. Just a few years ago, there was an earthquake, and being resilient to those things is just part of the DNA of the company, and really my whole profession and the latter part of my career as an engineer. So I started out more in transportation, that kind of thing, but in the last 15, 20 years, I became really focused and passionate about climate, resilience, and sustainability. And climate kind of has two prongs to it. Climate adaptation, which is what the CAC is all about, but then there's also climate mitigation, greenhouse gas, carbon reduction, that kind of thing. And they are very much overlapping, including with resilience. You can think of these as big overlapping circles. And resilience isn't exactly the same as climate adaptation, but it is very similar and very synergistic and overlapping. And so we'll talk a little bit more through examples, tying in some of the climate champions and the things they've done here in this community as best case, kind of best practices on the next few slides. I also want to mention, my wife is here, Christina. She's my partner in our local business here. So we live in Laurel Park. We have some properties in Laurel Park, and she manages our properties. Also have an advisory practice based here in Laurel Park. So we've been here 6 years or so now, and it really has become part of our heart and soul as a couple, and we really have loved being a participant here with CAC to become a part of this community. And so again, I'm very excited to be a board member of CAC, but also here speaking as a resilience engineer and practitioner. Part of my background as well in prior companies before I joined CSA, I was at a very large international engineering company as an executive there. And while I was there, led this book, which you see on the screen there, Future Ready, Your Organization's Guide to Rethinking Climate, Resilience, and Sustainability. It came out in 2023. I brought a few extra copies, and I did this when I spoke previously here, and I'll give a copy to anybody who's willing to sign up. If you're not already a member, if you look in the back page of the brochure, there's a list of who are Category 1 through 5 members. And anybody who's willing to become a Category 1 member or above today, happy to give a copy of a book. And if other people are interested as well, I'll also be open to, after any new members get their book, and if I have any others left, I don't want to take them home, so I will absolutely, go home empty-handed. I'd love to give out the copies of the books. Yeah, thank you. Very good. And then I also want to mention, I'm on 2 other boards, actually. One is up on the screen, the International Coalition for Sustainable Infrastructure, which very much has resilience as part of its charter. I was actually a co-founding board member of that. And then what's not on the screen, because it's not as tied to resilience, but I'm equally proud of, is I'm on the board of Local Relief, Heather Hackett over there, if you don't know Heather. So Local Relief is an app, technology, tied to technology, Tom here. And it's a place where people can go after disasters to find resources. Where's the Red Cross available? What government funding is available? What local companies provide disaster recovery type services? And so her app that she developed is a clearinghouse for that, and it's based here in Sarasota, but is available across the country as a resource for people dealing with disasters and disaster recovery. And then on the right, this is kind of my objective statement when it comes to resilience and sustainability and climate adaptation. It's really all about being scalable. And again, the Living Laboratory is a great example of taking all the success CAC has had and scaling it up. And to scale it up, you need science. CAC is always about science. And the more data you have, especially with AI now, the more you can be effective in becoming resilient and tying it into the community. And so it's great that it's here in Sarasota Bay. And I've also, since Hurricane Sandy hit New Jersey a little over a decade ago, I was focused there on the Jersey shore, very similarly to the focus here now in Sarasota. So this is something that I've been doing for about 15 years now, and really happy to be doing it along with CAC and all the members and partners here in Sarasota. It's a really exciting time to make a difference to the community here, and then scale it up elsewhere. Bob and I have been talking about taking CAC to New Jersey, or we've also talked about Colorado before, and maybe take some of the success here and try to emulate it elsewhere. So this is something also very exciting that we're talking about now here at CAC. So like I said, I wanted to focus on Sarasota Bay, this area, as an example for resilience and how you do resilience right. And the Climate Champions Award program that's been going on for a few years now is a great place to cultivate these best case examples. And this first example is a very recent, this year's Climate Champion, Sarah Kane from Sarasota County. She's an example of individual leadership within the government, being a champion, first within her own organization, but then also out in the community. And you see a few of the highlights of what she's done that are relevant to resilience on the screen there. Vulnerability assessments. Again, this is data, very data intensive. When you do a storm vulnerability assessment, you have to have a lot of data. But like Bob said, there's not as much as you would think that's local. And so having the living laboratory, when they do update their vulnerability assessment, which you always have to, by the way, because things change, community develops, new assets, new community members, they all have different vulnerabilities. So you're never done with vulnerability assessments. So the living laboratory will play into Sarah's role there with Sarasota County. She also has become a real champion in harvesting grants, especially from government grants, federal, state, local, because you can't do this purely on local taxpayer dollars. It's too big a challenge. And she really has been a leader in that, bringing in millions of dollars of funding to Sarasota County. And then the last thing I would point out about her as a real resilience leader is focusing on those who need it the most. It's a really important part because Guillermo mentioned this too, that the poor actually, the poor, the people who don't have mobility, the older people or other people who just don't have mobility, they're the most vulnerable. And she's really focused on that and is a real leader in including that in the vulnerability assessment, not just physical vulnerability, but community vulnerability and bring it even down to the personal, most affected and most at risk parts of the community. The next example, I think AG may have left. He was here earlier, but AG Lafley is a real leader as well. And he, of course, leads the Bayfront Park there, the amazing, phase 1 that's already been completed, and phase 2 about to start, and really I think already is starting the early components of it. And it really is an example of what was also talked about earlier, which is moving, in Guillermo's Tybee Island example, moving a lot of the development off the edge, right, off the coastal edge. Because when you put buildings, even if you have these big seawalls right on the coastal edge of a community, by definition, they are vulnerable. I'm an engineer, so I know. There is no amount of concrete and steel that you will put up, unless you put it up so high that you take away the entire view of the beautiful bay, that will protect you. So it's this catch-22. People want to be right up against the water, but putting buildings right up against the water, like the Van Wezel, which was built before people thought about these kind of things, it's beautiful, but it puts it at amazing, immense risk that you really can't engineer around. So the whole idea of the park, the Bay Park, is to create a living shoreline that is a resilience buffer, but also it treats all the stormwater through the natural bioswales and the mangrove bayou that was created in phase 1. You see it in the picture there. I don't know if you all have seen it. If you haven't, please take a quick trip to see it and walk the trail. When you walk inside that bayou, you would not know you're in the middle of downtown Sarasota. It's amazing. And we need to do more of that. In phase 2, we'll do more of that and move the new Performing Arts Center up into inland, but also elevate it. That's how you make the buildings resilient, is by giving them more elevation and putting a natural living shoreline buffer around them. And the Bay Park is an amazing example of that. And you don't have to take my word for it, because you see the photos here. This is a recent storm since the phase 1 of the Bayfront was done. The photo on the left was after the storm in the area that became that living shoreline buffer. It's also a beach with chairs, heavy chairs that are made out of metal, that you see that the storm moved the chairs, but the chairs didn't float away. It's right on the edge of the mangrove bayou, is just to the back right of that picture, and almost zero damage on that stretch of the Bayfront. The next picture is literally just on the other side of that new mangrove bayou. It's between Van Wezel, that short walkway between Van Wezel and the waterfront, and it was devastated completely. And there's a wall there, and there's these big concrete blocks there, right? You can't engineer your way out of vulnerability when a big storm and a big storm surge, a direct hit happens. And so this is proof in pictures right there of what resilience really means and how we need to look to the future where, yes, you can have buildings that are just inside of these living shorelines, these naturally engineered, nature-based solutions they're sometimes referred to as. You still have the view of the water. It's still beautiful. And it's more accessible to the public than having buildings right up against the water. This is the way you do it. This is a prime example of how you do something resilient and sustainable, environmentally sustainable. Like I mentioned, all the stormwater that hits this site gets treated naturally through the bioswales and the mangrove. Next example with Jennifer here, Marie Selby Gardens. So, as Rob mentioned in his opening, this is another prime example, and it's located a little further south, but right on the Sarasota Bay as well. And this is, a great example of really thinking it through and funding it through various ways of funding that. I mean, Jennifer's amazing on how she gets this stuff done. And you can get people, the private sector, to fund projects like this if it's well thought through, if it's well presented, and it's tied to the community. So it's got a benefit, right? People will support this. And like the Bayfront, it's a great combination of resilience and sustainability. As was mentioned, it's not only, some people say net zero, meaning it's got no carbon footprint. This is actually net positive. So it produces more energy than it actually consumes through all the solar panels that were incorporated into the parking garage and elsewhere. And if you haven't been there again, please go see it. It's amazing. This gem right here in Sarasota. I have two of my favorite running routes. I run in the morning here, and one goes by Selby and over to the marina and the Bayfront Park there, and the other one is up to the Bayfront Park that I just showed on the last slide. I mean, every time I run by, there's this sense of pride. It wells up, inside me, especially as an engineer, but really as a local citizen. We need to do more of these things and look to these leaders and these leadership examples and best practices examples for the future here in Sarasota and really everywhere, especially in coastal communities. And again, like the Bayfront, there's advanced stormwater treatment that's incorporated in. You may not see it there, but it's all part of the plantings and everything else. They're beautiful, but they also treat the water before it either goes down into the ground or off as surface discharge. And the buildings themselves are also built to, modern hurricane codes, which Florida is very strong from the standpoint of having a very modern, hurricane code. But there are places where they waive it. Sadly, in some of the storm-impacted areas of the Panhandle, previous hurricanes, they are waiving some of the codes so that people can build back more cheaply, more quickly, thinking they're doing a favor to those local communities by doing that. And I'm here to tell you that the next time that hurricane hits that same location, you won't have done those people a favor by waiving or weakening the code compliance. And again, Selby, a great example where all the new buildings, which are beautiful and functional, are all to the highest standards of engineering and hurricane-proof codes. So again, great examples of leadership and engineering and resilience. And then the last, climate champion I want to put up there, David Kotako, who's a co-founding member of the CAC, he's spoken here before. It's all about, being honest and candid, but also not divisive about the fact that you can't ignore climate warming. You can't ignore the impact of more extreme weather. And you need to first recognize it, but then you need to use science and use good leadership, good thinking to take action at all levels, especially in government, but not just government, also in the community and in the private sector. And bringing on corporate partners is something that Bob and I have also talked about, CAC, and in fact, happy that CSA is one of the corporate partners of CAC. It takes everyone to really become more resilient as a community and show that leadership, and then take that example and scale it to other places by people seeing all the success that we're having here and all the positive momentum we're having here. And again, the Living Laboratory is something that once it gets up and running, it's something that other communities will absolutely want to emulate. And in fact, I'm already slated to speak up in New Jersey at a Rutgers University event in a couple months on this exact topic of how the New Jersey shore can learn from what we're doing here in the Sarasota Bay area. Happy to take questions on other examples outside of the Sarasota Bay, many of which are in the book here, and just other ones I know about. I've been blessed to work around the world on sustainability and resilience as an engineer. So any questions, whether it be about Sarasota Bay or it be outside this area when it comes to resilience and sustainability, happy to take questions.
Hold on, Bob, let's get your mic so they can hear you on the stream.
Thank you, Rick. I'm sorry. I should know my lesson, right? I make everybody else do this. But I just wanted to say, one of the great things about the world we live in is that a lot of other people are trying to solve the same problems we are. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are some parts of the wheel that are special to our car, that are really unique. And so that part we need to invent. But the Living Laboratory is a way to bring in what others have learned in other places so that we can learn from them too. And, as I see Tom on our board, he's been indispensable because he brings the worldview in. I can't imagine how many cities he's been in since he's been working on this. Every time I text him, he's some other place and not this place. So what I'm saying is bringing the world in is part of what we need to do. We don't need to invent everything here, but once we invent what we have, we definitely want to export it to others too. So thanks, Tom. I really appreciate what you're doing and how you're doing it. And of course, with his enthusiasm, who wouldn't? And knowledge too. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bob, and really appreciate that. And probably most, if not all, of the people in this room know this just from hearing Bob talk even today, if today is your first day you've heard him. But as Bob and I talk about this CAC being scalable, one of the challenges is how unique an asset Bob Bunting is. So if people don't know how unique what he brings to the table is, again, I've traveled the country, I've traveled the world, he is a unicorn. He is an absolute unicorn. And we are so blessed to have him here. So if you haven't spent time with Bob, I highly recommend it because he's amazing. And he's why I'm here. So, yeah, thank you. Yes.
To follow up on Bob's point, I'm wondering if there's anywhere that we can look to that has adapted in a way that preserved the culture and character and history of that location, because we are such a rich and artsy and amazing community. So how do we adapt without changing my favorite aspects about here?
That is a great question and a very big challenge. And Christina and I, we live in Laurel Park, which is, if you don't know Laurel Park, it's right in downtown, but it's an old artist colony. Small bungalows and cottages, and the properties we own are of that nature. But then in and amongst them, if you walk Laurel Park, you'll see newer, modern buildings popping up, some townhouses popping up. And it is a really big challenge to grow as a community and become economically sustainable, because sustainability, by the way, yes, there's environmental sustainability, but there's also economic sustainability, there's social sustainability. So you're talking about social sustainability, historic preservation being an aspect of both that and environmental sustainability. But what about economic sustainability, and how do you balance development with sustainability and resilience? It's a huge challenge, so I really appreciate your question. I wish there were a silver bullet answer to your question. There's not, other than, again, it takes all levels of government, it takes private sector as well, it takes nonprofits in the historic preservation realm to all have a voice and to not allow that voice to be silenced. And be at the table, be at those town council meetings, those planning and zoning meetings. I know in Laurel Park, every time there's a development, even just outside of the boundaries of Laurel Park, our neighborhood association absolutely speaks up and is at those meetings. And it's not easy, but you have to do it. And you can win. There are multiple examples where maybe you didn't stop the development from happening at all, but you had an element of the historic character of what was there before, sometimes physically preserved, like in the case of the Miramar, development that's going on and just starting right now, which I ran by this morning and saw the barricades are now up, so construction's about to start. But that developer is being required to preserve that whole historic, storefront, row of storefronts there, and then build the development just in back of it and above it. You might say, oh, well, that's even a shame that it's now going to be looming over the historic storefronts, but it's better than them being gone, right? So sometimes there's compromise too. That's another part of the answer to your question. You have to be willing to compromise. You can't have one side totally win 100% and the other side totally lose 100%. That's not economically sustainable for a place like Sarasota. So yeah, it's hard. But collaboration always is hard, and community activism is hard and doesn't always win, and sometimes it's very frustrating, but it has to be. People have to do it. And again, organizations like CAC and like Bob being on the Purple Ribbon Committee for the Van Wezel, all examples of how you figure out how you maybe can strike some kind of compromise, and worst case, if you can't, back to your core question about historic preservation, yeah, you at least can record what was there before and put a monument there or a kiosk. I've seen that done before, where people can see what was there before. It's not lost totally. Yeah, there's lots of tools in the toolbox. So yeah, if you're involved in that, I applaud you, because that's really, really important work you're doing, and anybody else that does that. So. All right, thank you.